Tworzyłem ten materiał z myślą, że ludzie nie są świadomi, jak faktycznie wygląda w internecie. Nie są świadomi, że najgłośniejsze sprawy, jakie słyszymy w mediach, mimo że i tak obrzydliwe, są jedynie czubkiem góry lodowej wykorzystywania dzieci oraz biznesu, jaki temu towarzyszy. Za chwilę posłuchacie wywiadu z członkiem grupy, która ściga w internecie i ze względu na to, że jest to pierwszy mój materiał tego typu, bardzo zależy mi na waszej opinii, także po obejrzeniu napiszcie w komentarzu, co powinienem zrobić lepiej, a które rzeczy wyszły dobrze. Ale już nie przedłużając, zapraszam do oglądania. So maybe let's start with introduction. Who are you and what do you do?
I'm somebody who hunts pedophiles along with a group of 3 other highly intelligent individuals. I've been around probably for the past 4 of the 13 years that the other people in the group have been around for. So, I mean, there's not really much interesting. I'm more the financial and scribe of the group, so to speak.
And when did you start the group and what was the initial reason behind it?
So the initial group and the ideology starts, I want to say, back in 2013 with Pavel. His reasoning was because of his mother's work after his abusive father was pretty much kicked out of the household. He would go on to help his mother deal with like blackmailers and stuff like that. I met Pavel, I want to say, in early 2020, and we had a mutual hatred for the injustice that was going on with the darknet at that time. We've started noticing there was a lot of websites, and there was just nothing we were really seeing that we're doing, and we've noticed a lot of them were very vulnerable to a variety of attacks, and these attacks were mostly Tor-based, but we just assumed that most of the illicit content existed over on Tor until we started investigating the ClearNet and found it to be an even bigger problem.
So it's not only Tor, it's available for everyone to see pretty much, right?
It is very easy to find once you know where to generally just start looking for it. We had seen people on Reddit discussing like the names of a website that wouldn't inherently be suspicious of like it being illegal content or something. But if you were to Google those, the names of the domains or something, you'd quickly find them. And that's what we've started discovering, that it was a very large problem, and it's very easy to source.
But you find a domain, isn't it like you can just send a message to the registrar service and they will take it down?
We've done registrars, we've done National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, we sent it to the Dutch police directly, we sent it to the FBI's Violent Crimes Task Force, so we sent it to a few different places. It's some websites have been suspended, whereas others, we've had a lot of problems, even with law enforcement not enforcing the law.
I see. And have you ever had any dangerous encounters with, let's say, an owner of one of these websites?
Not of an owner, but Pavel has pissed off people like ransomware developers. There was at a point, I think, yeah, he was messing around with ransomware developers. I think at one point, the person who was behind the Colonial Pipeline hack, his name's Alexander. He was all looking around for people to have Pavel murdered. So I mean, we've had legitimate people who we know have the money that could do it, but they don't have the context and resources to carry out any harmful acts.
So it's not only child abuse that you go after?
We have different sprouts where we'll be doing other crimes to just distract ourselves from the horrors of this job. So it's not uncommon to see us go after ransomware or other specific crimes in general, because again, this work does get very mentally straining, and it can it's horrible. We've seen some of the most depraved things. We've read some of the most depraved cases, and it never gets any easier to deal with it.
Okay, and can you tell us a bit more about this world of online pedophilia? How does it really look like?
So a lot of it is there's two separate groups within the whole the industry in the production and distribution of this, and that's where we mostly focus on the distribution aspect of it, because it is harder to find the initial source of somebody maybe producing it. But even in there, you have your subcategories, which you have the normal, and then you have those who are the sadist. And we try to stay as far away from the sadism elements, because they are some of the worst things I've probably ever heard or read. Probably one of the only other things I've read was who's done some horrible crimes would have to be Tim Amoroso, who's a zoo sadist. So he's more in zoo. But in general, a lot of these sites we were actually finding by accident. We were on Census and Shodan, which are IoT search engines. And we initially found, I believe, a few of them in Poland, Los Angeles, California, and Russia. Pavel's from Russia, so he was able to get those pretty much swept into the garbage can pretty quickly. They had no problem getting the services suspended at the very least.
All right.
We were able to start determining that a lot of these services were pretty dumb in regards, because again, if you know how to search and query Census and Shodan, there is websites that you can find via these free to use tools that have anywhere from 1.2 million to 3.6 million links that are in the public area of the forum that can be accessed without paying for a subscription or paying for the banned access area. But in these forums and to their networking of other sites, there has been some pretty depraved content for anywhere from young children that are as young as newborn. I think there was one that was, I'd have to say 2 months old, all the way up to 17-year-olds, and it's horrible.
And now, as you mentioned content, what can be found on these websites? What was the scariest thing that you have ever seen?
Some of the worst content we've come across would have to be, it has a word for it. It's called hurtcore, which is kind of like hardcore, but it's intentional to harm and torture and cause pain to the person. It's pedophiles typically have a belief that they are doing what's right for the child, and that they like it and it's consensual and the kid likes it and stuff, which is known as kind of like grooming, essentially. And over time, that specifically can lead to the abused becoming the abuser. However, in some cases, there is a lot of groups such as 764, which has different names. I've heard anything from like them extorting children to having a girl, I think she was like, I don't remember how old she was, but they had her bite the head off a hamster. I have never heard of a hamster dying in a normal way, but that one is probably one of the most abnormal ways I've ever heard of a hamster just and not ceasing to exist. But some of the worst content we have seen or heard of is Daisy's Destruction, which is a well-known collection of films. Peter Scully is currently serving life in a Filipino prison. He ran No Limits Fun. He was arrested with Shannon McCole and Matthew Graham, which were also Australians. These happened back in 2014, 2015, and I believe somewhere around that era. But Daisy's Destruction, Daisy, despite the name, wasn't. Is still very much alive to this very day, despite her physical impairedities. However, of the three kids that were featured in the film, one of the children was unfortunately murdered by Peter. Some have even got to the point where, like they say, there was topics and like we've seen titles and stuff where they were saying like she screamed, so I murdered her or something like that. Like there's been straight up snuff, murder, torture. There's only a few things that I've ever really seen, but there's other things that are verifiably existing that are tied to these darker industries and underground forums that I've been made aware of. And as I said earlier, is Tim Amoroso is probably one of the ones that I have heard of, but I have not seen. But from what I was able to read about it, it made me cry. And I don't cry at a lot of things. And that was one of the things that I probably cried over. And he was a zoo sadist and he's still alive and roaming around Washington State. He's never been convicted of his crimes. Again, statute of limitations interferes with that. I don't know if he's ever a kid or touched a kid, but he has tortured and animals, and in some pretty horrific ways.
Now, as you mentioned tortures, there's this legend, I would say, about websites called red rooms. Now, I'm sure you are familiar with this term. Do they really exist, or is it just a myth?
So red rooms themselves do not, but the content does exist. And in, I think, 82 countries around the world, some of the content, as long as it's not sex minors, most of it is classified protected speech and freedom of, it can be classified under like freedom of the press. So snuff itself in the United States is not illegal on its own. So you can own like videos of people getting murdered, tortured. There's no limits on that. But the production of the videos, and engaging in the content that was being recorded or being photographed or whatever, that is illegal. So it's a 50-50 on that. But in other countries, the obscene material of gore and stuff is not actually legal. But red rooms themselves do not exist, as the Tor network specifically cannot handle live streaming. That the latency and the design would just not support it.
Okay, so it's basically you can download the videos, but there are not like live streams.
There's a lot of them. There was a lot of websites. I mean, I grew up.
There's not like a Twitch for this.
No, not at all. Okay. I mean, I grew up. I think there's a ClearNet website. It's now defunct, but it was called Best Gore. I mean, I remember the site, and I was actually going to buy it at one point because, again, it is a resource that I find is completely unbiased, and it shows a different perspective of what happened and allows a lot of academic researchers to study the phenomenons of death and mental illness and a variety of other topics. So I was really interested in buying that, and I still am interested in buying that. But in the regards of live streaming murder or like torture and stuff, it does exist, but there is no legitimate dedicated websites on the dark net, or as far as I can tell, the ClearNet. Could they exist? Yeah, sure. On the ClearNet, sure, but it would be a lot of work to set those up.
And coming back to pedophilia in itself, do you treat it like a regular illness, and do you believe that it can be cured?
I don't think so. No, I think that the problem with pedophilia is that a lot of the cases that I've specifically come across, there was an element of the childhood that was the reason for it. Specifically, usually when I've come across it is usually that there was a family member that had groomed the person, and they were not given sufficient help at in their childhood. This later turned into something maybe like a addiction, which is not technically classified as an addiction, and it just led to them craving more dark and depraved topics and more hardcore content, and it just has led to something that will never be curable because it is so deep rooted into the mind at that point. So I don't believe that it can be cured. I could believe it can be fully prevented or mostly prevented, but I believe that there needs to be stricter punishments for those convicted of.
Do you believe in death punishment for?
I do. I am a strong supporter of the laws of Nigeria and the state of Louisiana, which are you can be castrated and surgically castrated, not chemically. And in both the state and that country, you can be put to death. But in the state of Louisiana and I think it's Idaho and Florida, the victim has to be under 12 for you to qualify for the most harsh of punishments that they'll give.
Okay, and punishing these criminals is one thing, but nowadays children that are 10 years old or even younger are on the internet pretty much all the time. So how do you think parents can protect them?
Yeah, it's restrict the access to. They are of a reasonable age. I'd say no less than the age of 13. I believe that kids before the age of 13 to be outside playing games and socializing. I remember when I was a kid, I mean, it was a lot better. I felt happier and healthier. And nowadays that I'm in front of a computer almost all day, I feel terrible. My health has declined more so than it was back then. So the depression is actually horrible. And putting people in front of complete strangers that it would the ability to be fully anonymous with VPNs and all that, I think that that is extremely harmful and just ignorant.
So you believe in completely restricting access to the internet for children, right?
I would say more in favor of like supervised restrictions. You can be on, like when I was growing up, it was somebody had to be around to monitor what you were doing on the computer and stuff. It was the typical 2000s, you know. Internet was in computers were just becoming more of a household item.
Okay.
So that's where my more stance would be but I don't believe you should just be putting your kid on Roblox and stuff, because when we were sifting through information stealing logs, it was never uncommon to find a pedophile that was using a Roblox or Epic Games, which owns Fortnite, and there was other, you know, Discord, and all that. I mean, it was in almost every log for every user. There was, you know, websites that were also in there too, and it was always like the same like accounts. You know, Epic Games, which is Fortnite. There might have been a U Plus account, which is Ubisoft, which I don't really know what they would have, but there was at least accounts in there where they could, you know, that were pretty obvious that they were hunting for kids on like social, like on these games that are made for children, kind of like. So that's what really bothers me, is that there are people out there and they do get sloppy, and we don't ever really get to see any of these cases go forward, and it's kind of annoying to us. But they do exist, and that's why we would rather just have a supervised restriction, or just an outright ban. But that being said, it's frustrating. Yeah, because I grew up with parents who wouldn't let me have like access to the internet or like even a phone for the longest time. So.
And now I reminded myself, if you started your group in 2013, have you ever heard about the Kick drama? Supposedly there were a lot of CSAM materials being shared on this platform.
Yeah, we had a specific person that we went after. He had a Kick profile. He self-admitted to a variety of crimes, but we did find and confirm that he was the person we said he is, because he reused his username on Kick, which was dumb. But he used his username where he admitted to committing the crimes, and then he had a picture of himself walking down like the road at night or something, and it was a picture of his like full face, and it was kind of dumb. So we assumed that he was engaging in discussing with minors there, because he was caught on both Telegram and Discord doing the same stuff. So we were assuming that he was probably doing the same stuff there. But yeah, it was a big thing back in the day. I remember hearing just a lot of stories about people going on there, and there's just predators and stuff on there, just hunting for children.
And now, while we are here, can you share more details about the operational side of your group? How do you work?
It's just more spur of the moment. We just find a target. We look for what we can find. We gather information, and it's more of just more of a guerrilla warfare tactic. You attack, you disappear, you attack again, and you just keep doing it until they either disappear or you find out the information. It's really more psychological and just causing frustration most of the time until we can get what we want. In other cases, it's just doing open source intelligence gathering. With one of the sites we found, it's actually Pavel. If he were to walk out onto his balcony and look due south, he would be able to see where one of the servers of this person of the administrator of a group of websites that are hosting a child, and it's. But he can just look out the window and see it. But we targeted this one specifically because we noticed it when we were looking for, I believe, the keyword darknet or something on census, and it just appeared. And when upon finding this, we were able to sit there and we reported it to the FBI. And I want to say about maybe 4 or 5 months later, we were sitting there and we went back to look for the website and see if it was still up. And this is this year. So in January, we were able to find that the person's name was able to be found through Google. And the way we found this was that the website's name, if you were to throw it into Google, you could find a GitHub account that then gave the city of the place where the person was living at. Mm-hmm. But one of the websites on the site that we were looking for other, websites that are domains or IP addresses that he was running off of, there was a .com.br on this one. So the GitHub that we found confirmed that he was there, and then pretty much from there we just started looking around and poking around, and finally we found Telegram, so we had his full name, and then we were able to we found somebody in Brazil, and they were able to break into the Brazilian citizens, the government's citizen database, and pull all of his information out of the database. So it's more of a sporadic attack. We'll find a site that we really want to pursue and getting it shut down or whatever, and we'll find every which way possible to just sit there and report the content, report the domain, identify its users, or gather information such as grabbing their stolen credentials that was stolen with malware that have ended up in public dumps on like Telegram or Hudson Rock or the recorded future or anything like that. So we have different attacks and different that, and it's just kind of everyone, if somebody finds something new, everyone kind of pokes and prods at it in their own way, and they just kind of go at it however they see fit.
So from what I can see, it's mostly open source intelligence, but do you have any hacking related stuff among your tactics?
We do have some elements of that. So Edward is the other one that would handle that, but he's mostly too busy. And again, it's just what we do mostly is I've been writing Python scripts since I was 12, and it's been about 12 years now. But
okay.
So yeah, I've been writing Python scripts. So we do have a lot of ability to, mass report content or build pretty much like bots to go about and crawl for like information and stuff. So it's not super like effective in getting the website shut down, but it allows us to have data points where we're able to go look for specific users or pull specific things and find out people's names. It is open source intelligence gathered into a way, but it is a lot of network related attacks specifically as well too.
And do you all come from IT background or something computer related?
Pavel is Pavel's more of he was a cyber criminal at one point. I came from a robotics and engineering background because it was an after school activity. Edward got into computer science, and his brother Vitaly is actually just a surgeon in St. Petersburg. So,
Surgeon.
but he's kind of more of the, yeah. So his brother's a surgeon. Yeah, it's a weird one, but like he's more of the point of contact for us because again, it's just easier to contact him, and he'll take any evidence of crimes in that region of the world to the cops.
Okay.
Because we have a lot of cases that are there, so
So
but he's
so you have someone in
he's
US,
kind of
someone in
messenger.
Russia, and so wait, Pavel
Well,
is...
there's two people. There's two people in the United States, which is me and Pavel.
Okay, Pavel
He
is
lives
in
in
the
Miami. He lives in Miami. I live outside of Detroit. So Edward lives in Berlin. So we got a person in Central Europe, and then we got somebody in Russia as well. So we pretty much have all the bases covered.
All right, and you said Pavel was a cyber criminal. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, Pavel actually has a little bit more of experience with social engineering and getting people to give him money and stuff. He used to impersonate women, and he was able to make significant amounts of money. He regrets it all.
You mean e-whoring? This thing?
Yeah, e-whoring. Yeah. It was a more polite way of saying getting around saying the word, but
Yeah.
no, that's what he used to do. Yeah, it's the way what he used to do. But so he actually, if asked about it, he actually is a little bit more aware of like what women have to deal with. So that's why like he's really disgusted when he hears about some random man sending like unsolicited pics of their their genitals to some woman. He made a lot of money, and he invested a lot of it well after the fact, and he used his own employment that he was also working on to move out of Russia and into one of the more wealthiest cities in the United States. So
good for him.
He's doing good, but he's paying back everything pretty much by trying to go after websites like come on printed pics, tribute pics, and stuff like that, which are non-consensual forums, and there's even which are now defunct. I'm pretty sure the Florida Department of Law Enforcement pretty much took them down. And they haven't been able to come back up. So that's the good news of that one. But yeah, he's paying back his what he's done with trying to get all these people actual help, since the law enforcement doesn't seem to really give two craps.
Cóż, podsumowanie tej 30-minutowej rozmowy pozostawię wam i chętnie poczytam wasze przemyślenia w komentarzach. Jak i również, tak jak wspominałem na początku filmu, chętnie poczytam opinie odnośnie tego formatu i czy chcielibyście zobaczyć więcej takich podcastowych materiałów na kanale. A jeśli chcielibyście usłyszeć historię, w jaki sposób amerykańska skarbówka przyczyniła się do zamknięcia największego na świecie serwisu udostępniającego dziecięcą na świecie, to klikajcie w ten link, gdzieś tu się powinien wyświetlać.